It's absolutely bucketing down today. A perfect day to continue working on building my off-road buggy. These are 5 of the pairs of ball joints that I bought, which have just been a waste of $250. Part of that's my fault because I've started to put the hubs upside down and had to go back the right way. But the other part of wastage has been caused by the parts people out here not having any cataloguing or measurements. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mike from the UK, who sent me this fantastic link to a catalogue detailing ball joints and tie rod ends and all their measurements. And I'll put the link here for you if anybody else needs it. So thanks again, Mike. And I've just used it to avoid ordering about 3 sets of the wrong ball joints for the top. The top wishbones on the front of this buggy are proving much more difficult to design and fabricate than the bottom because of the issue of the ball joints. I've been able to get the correct size, 16mm, but the problem is the angle at which manufacturers make these joints, given that this is designed to be used as a bottom ball joint, not upside down that way as a top joint. I can further illustrate this for you with the Mazda RX-7 Series 6 upper wishbone, which is designed to go with this hub. Notice the angle of movement of this wishbone. But the problem that I'm having is being caused by when the wishbone rides at normal ride height. In a vehicle, it's about there with a slight rise on it. But it's the opposite on an off-road long travel buggy. That's where the suspension wishbone will start from in the normal at-rest position. And it will only go to that level in the full bump position. So my angles here are different requirements. So I can't even cut this off and use it because on full bump I'd have to fabricate the suspension wishbone arms to those angles. So what I've done is I've taken the Mazda Unos ball joint that fits the Mazda hub, cut the end off to shorten it, drill the second hole and made a bracket that will slide up over it. I've then bolted that together, and that's where I'm going to weld my wishbone arms to. As I'm about to fabricate the top wishbones for the 3rd time, it makes sense to have the hub at the caster angle that I want the car to run at. The book advises me the best angle is 5 degrees. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to put this file down through the top ball joint hole. I've packed it out with tape so it'll sit in the centre, and that end sits on the ball joint there. So this gives me a tool by which to adjust the angle that way. This is crude, but it will get me in the ballpark. But how am I going to get the angle correct? I've been a smart little boy and I bought one of these angle devices off eBay. What a magic little device with a magnet in either side. So I just stick it now on the file and I've adjusted the hub and I've got 5 degrees negative caster there. So now I can fabricate the top wishbone arm. I've undone the rear sway bar so I can move the rear hub up and down and check the geometry of how I've locked off this steering. Originally the rack and pinion sat there, and what I've done here is I've copied a system I saw on one of the cars at our hill climb where the guy had made brackets on the wishbone itself and tied the rods to that. But in testing it, you can see that it doesn't work. Because this is moving in its vertical plane, it's having the effect of steering the rear end. So what I need to do is to remove this bracket that I've tacked in place on the wishbone, build a bracket onto the chassis to hold the tie rod end where the end of the rack and pinion used to be. And then, as you can see, I won't have any bump steer. The front suspension wishbones have been fabricated. I've made them about 5 times to get them right. I've incorporated a sway bar off a Honda Civic. And given that this car is not going to go off-road but be driven rather on graded rally tracks with no jumps, that amount of suspension travel I'm happy with. and the camber's doing what it's supposed to. Adjustable at all 4 points. Camber's adjustable there. I should be able to get that front end just the way I want it. I've also welded on tabs for the bodywork that I'm going to make next. The limitation of the travel of the front end is determined by the angles that ball joint will pivot to. When I was looking for information on how to make my front suspension, I came across a guy on a forum that said anyone that sets out to scratch build their own double wishbone long travel front suspension is a fool. And having done it, I can see what he means. It's really difficult. I made a lot of mistakes, but let me share a couple of things that I learnt that you might find helpful. The first thing I found was that I had the hub in the fully up position, fully compressed position, and I made my bottom wishbone, then the top wishbone. When I lowered it back down to full droop, the top suspension arm was too short. So what I'd suggest doing, learning from my mistakes, is if you're making one of these front ends, put your hub in the full height position, fabricate your bottom wishbone, then put it in the full droop, and then fabricate your top wishbone. That's what I have to do. The other thing is that this book, which I used as a guide, is about building clubman suspensions and on racing cars, and he says that the height of your inner hub mounting, inner chassis mounting points has to be the same as your height of your hub swivel points. And so in this case, from there to there is from that bottom to top hole, and that's 10 inches. I built the mounting points like that and found that the front end didn't work. What I found by trial and error is that on a long travel suspension you actually need the top point lower. So from on the outside it's 10 inches from the top hole to the bottom, and on this car, on the chassis, it's 8.5 inches from those 2 points. I don't claim to be an expert, far from it, but I hope you find those two things helpful. At last I've reached an exciting point in the build. I'm getting the buggy off the table. How am I going to move it, given it's got no wheels? I'm going to use a method used by the Egyptians. I'm going to put a steel tube under it. Yeah, okay, they use logs. I found with a roller underneath something, you can move anything.